Welcome and thanks for taking the time to join us today. I'm Charlie Imbergamo, Director of Strategic Programs for the Nonprofit Leadership Center. Our NLC team is committed to continue to develop and connect leaders across the region to strengthen organizations and our community. We believe that knowledge gained and shared strengthens all of our leadership. It's an honor for us to welcome you to this virtual space for today's webinar, Creative Innovation for Visionary Leadership. To recognize and celebrate the organizations that you represent, I would ask you to locate the chat box and to type the name of your organization in the chat right now. As we see the names of your organizations popping into the chat feed, let's all take a moment to recognize the potential for good in our community through our organizations. Take a moment to let that sink in. We're joined today in this great work by Emily Ghosh Harris and Dr. Alex Harris, a dynamic duo, a power couple, who will facilitate this conversation. Emily is the founder of Soul Media Global, with an extensive digital media background specializing in brand development and experiential marketing. She has spearheaded digital marketing campaigns and developed brand strategies for some of the largest media companies in the world, multi-billion-dollar brands, startups, and everything in between. We're honored that Emily is an NLC trainer and facilitator with us. Emily has dedicated her career to helping individuals and businesses of all sizes to reach their highest potential. She's the host of the Soul Collective podcast. Dr. Alex Harris is an academician, humanitarian, singer, and songwriter, and is the co-founder of the Arts Conservatory for Teens, ACT. ACT utilizes the performing arts and creative critical thinking to educate, empower, and enrich the lives of youth and teens, especially disadvantaged and high-risk youth. Alex firmly believes in an artist's social responsibility, accountability, and empowering communities to provide equitable and equal access to all people, so that all have the opportunity to excel and realize their vision and their dreams for the future, regardless of their personal circumstances of birth. Never have the issues of vision, innovation, leadership, and equity been more important in our communities than now. Moderating our session today is my teammate and colleague, Karina Kletter, NLC's program associate. Karina has been instrumental in driving our work in this virtual space. We simply couldn't do it without her. She will take us through some of the rules of the road for our time together today. Karina.
Thank you, Charlie. So just a couple of quick logistics before we get started. To minimize background noise and distractions, all lines will be muted for the duration of the webinar. The session is being recorded and will be available on our website for future viewing. We warmly welcome your questions. Please go ahead and type them in the chat box. Emily and Alex will take some time at the end of their presentation to take questions. And if you haven't found the chat box yet, go to the settings at the bottom of your Zoom screen and click on chat. We're so delighted to have Emily and Alex with us today and look forward to a productive, engaging session. So on to you, Emily and Alex.
Thank you very much. Well, we're really excited to be a part of this conversation later we'll have together. We have a presentation about creative innovation for visionary leadership, something that an area that I and Emily, we have together focused on, as well as individually before we started the collaboration, which led to the collaboration and working together to bring both of our experiences to share with other leaders throughout our community and as we've done throughout the world. So just a little bit about myself.
Yeah, and thank you all. We are so grateful for you taking the time this afternoon to join us. As Charlie mentioned, these are such critical times, and it's such an important conversation to have. And we're excited to share, our thoughts around creative innovation. As Alex mentioned, we were going to share a little bit of background on who we are for those of you who aren't familiar.
Yeah, just a few fun facts outside of the bio that Charlie read. I'm from a little small town called Manchester, Georgia, originally. I moved to Florida by way of Boston about 11, almost 12 years ago. And I'm a musician, one of 8 children, 5 boys, 3 girls. I'm in the middle, and we've traveled and performed, and I have my own music company as well. That is a music furnishing company for songwriters and producers. And just had a lot of chance to just work with various artists and actors throughout the entertainment industry, some you may be familiar with, and sit on the Recording Academy, the Grammy Board, and have voted and worked on various committees from advocacy to education and other committees as well.
Yeah, and I'm also from a small town, although I grew up in the north in Massachusetts. And, before starting my company, I worked in corporate America. I worked for one of the largest media companies in the world, and then worked for a Fortune 100 company, really in the realm of digital marketing. And, Alex and I have worked together for over 10 years now as friends. And it was really our work that brought us together and led to us getting married. And so we're so excited to, continue that work together and share with all of you today. So we're going to be talking a little bit, and Alex is going to give a little bit of background on what creative innovation means.
Yeah, so creative innovation in context today, we're really looking to explore this thought around an open canvas, an opportunity to come up with an original thought or unusual thought that leads to an original practice or an unusual practice. Again, to reiterate, in such times that we are all experiencing, it's very important to really think of our work and what we do as an opportunity to create on this open canvas, or this space that has not been treaded before. So we want to say, what can I create? What can I facilitate with my team in the best interest of our organization to create something special, to create something that is competitive, something that really serves our community in a way that we have not before. Not trying to take or insert what we have done as recent as 5 months ago. How can we really start to shift our thinking? It's the organizational mindset that starts with the leadership that really helps to move the thinking of the team, our C-suite, our staff, and ultimately the greater community in which we are serving. How can we move that forward? So that's what we're going to be really focusing on and setting the stage throughout our presentation today.
Yeah, and we understand that this is a really challenging time to think creatively. I mean, there's so much that we're all facing right now collectively that we've never experienced before. And I think it's really important to recognize all of those factors that are coming into play that are really new and that add to some of these components, right? We understand that there's certain factors that limit creative innovation. And those things are simple. Those things are things like anxiety and emotional turmoil and stress. They really prevent us from thinking outside of the box and thinking creatively. And there's been numerous studies that have been done on this and how times of exasperated stress or emotional turmoil can impact our ability to think creatively. One study was conducted with 9,000 journal entries, and half of the participants were given really strict, rigid, stressful time constraints, and the other were allowed to be more free in their thought. And the findings were very conclusive in terms of the group that wasn't stressed, that they were allowed to, they brought forward a lot more creative ideas. A similar study was done with a group of participants that were shown 2 short film clips. One was shown a film clip a stressful scene from Saving Private Ryan. And the other group was shown a film clip, a happy, uplifting clip from the movie Shrek. And then they were given a survey or a questionnaire to answer after that. There was 39% more accuracy in the group that watched the Shrek movie. This isn't conclusive. There's been studies with rats that were given stressful circumstances, and literally the parts of the brain that are connected with creative function were turned off. So literally your brain is in a sense of fight or flight in a time of emotional turmoil. I think it's important to recognize that, because that really plays into when we talk about cultivating creative innovation, is first recognizing what's happening on an emotional level.
Right. I couldn't agree more. So how do we start the process on releasing that creativity that we can become more innovative? I think we have to make to be really awake as leaders to where we are, more than just aware because we hear the noise, but awake to the environment and that which is really impacting the behavior of our teams, right? So we all know is taking over the media, social and racial injustices, as well as COVID-19 crisis. The social and racial injustices, I think, is very important as leaders to not be afraid or not turn our heads to something that is very critical in this moment, whether we have an extremely diverse and inclusive environment with the employees or staff, or it is not. I think because this is our community and we are doing a great service as organizations and organization leaders, and our teams are definitely a very critical element or component to this. So we should be very cognitive of asking ourselves as leaders, how can we create in our work environment a space that is safe, that we can listen and understand each other, and is something that cannot be passive. It's more than just a letter that goes out in emails. It's about really having that courageous conversation with our board members, with our staff and teams, so that we can together, collectively as leaders, we can say, okay, together, let's see where our opportunities are to make bigger strides to making our environment a safer space, and where folks are not under the stress or anxiety and feel that they can't talk about how they feel because we can't talk about that here. When we shun away or we shy or we sweep it under the rug or close the door to it, we are doing ourselves as an organization a disservice to be creative, because if your team isn't creative and it's not a safe and a happy place for folks to come to work, whether it's virtually or in person, you are really reducing your competitive advantage, which is going to lead to your ability to get the cash flow that's needed to do your operations. We're in a different time. So even then, different than 5 months ago, this may not have been a conversation or something you would not have thought about incorporating or integrating into the fabric of the culture of the organization. But it's very, very critical at this moment in time that these happenings that are in our environment that are going on are very important to address straightforward.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think there's most of the world is paying attention to this heightened, circumstances that we're seeing really in our country right now. And it can be, even if there isn't a lot of racial diversity in your organization, it is still such an important topic, I think, to address and have an open, candid conversation with your team members about, because, a lot of people are feeling the effects. They have an opinion about what's happening. And I think it's better to open up and have a dialogue. A lot of times team members are waiting for the leaders of an organization to address the situation and open up a dialogue. And that can be really healing for all team members involved. And I think it's such an important thing. I know that there's a lot that's happening in our world right now. So it feels like, oh, wow, we have so much going on and we have so many balls in the air. But at the same time, taking a step back and addressing some of these current issues can help the organization to move forward. Similarly, when we talk about COVID-19, we're right around 30% unemployment rate, which is a staggering number. So even if there's not economic uncertainty within your organization, there can still be a feeling of great uncertainty among your team members. And that's important to acknowledge. You know, I think one of the ways to address that concern that might be just in the collective, so to speak, of people understanding that this is an issue, maybe being concerned about potentially layoffs or furloughs or the state of the organization, is to be as transparent as possible, not to allow your team members to wonder, okay, what's going to happen, where are we at right now, but really to address it in a way that's proactive. Okay, so, you know, telling your team members, we're doing great. We are thriving during this, challenging time. Or if you're not, having a transparent conversation and saying, here is where we're struggling right now, but we have a plan of X, Y, and Z in order to address these concerns. That will help alleviate this feeling of wondering, where do I stand with the organization? Are we in a safe space to move forward, which are things that can really limit creative innovation. People right now more than ever are craving certainty. We have so much uncertainty. We want to feel certain about some things. And so as a leader of your team, the way that you can handle this is to help your team members feel certain within their standing in the organization. And that can be done through feedback and encouragement, just, allowing your team members to know that you see them, that you really truly appreciate that the work that they're doing for the organization, and also maybe making it a little bit more clear. This isn't micromanaging, but it's just saying, hey, if you're working on these 3 projects, these projects will really make a significant impact in moving the needle overall for our organization, and we really need your help.
Right. The way you may have led your team before, as I aforementioned, even 5 months ago, there has to be this step into this space that you have not treaded before, because the reality is we have not treaded this space before. So our response has to be exactly what it is around both the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, as well as the social and racial injustices crisis as well, that we should be looking at our systems and operations and ensuring how we can do better around it all. Again, whether it's in person or in virtual spaces, as most of us are working virtually, I think, and integrating that in a routine manner to really address and to check in to ensure that it's an ongoing, this is an opportunity for growth, to expand the operations and how we are sensitive and how we are aware and how we are responsive to the awareness, and it's not passive. This is going to make a huge difference in your ability to perform at your highest level, which impacts how the team performs at its highest level as well. So very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wanted to share a little bit of data around this point. And, this first graph really speaks to the fact that, look, 83% of our country is stressed about the future of our nation. And so that's really significant if you look at that over last year, which was 66%. So you're looking at really the vast majority has some concerns and stress related to the future of our nation. The next data point that we want to share is related and similar, but it's saying that most Americans say this is the lowest point in history that they can remember, 72%. And, I think a little bit differently than the stress in the previous slide, this talks about mental health, right? We already are facing somewhat of a mental health crisis in our country. And now more than ever before, I think it's really something that we need to address and not sweep under the rug, and really have an open dialogue with your team and check-ins on how they're doing. You know, I think one of the things about this time is that we're seeing sort of this blur between personal life and family life and work life and mental health. All of this are kind of converging into one. And that's a good thing, but we can't, you know, kind of think in silos as we have, you know, maybe in the past, but really integrate and really understand from a holistic perspective, how is your team doing? You know, checking in, especially if there is some economic uncertainty and uncertainty about the future, you know, your team members might not feel comfortable opening up and sharing that, hey, they're really going through a tough time and just having a hard time dealing with everything that's happening in the world right now. But that's why it's really important to have check-ins and just, you know, maybe it's a listening circle. This is, like Alex mentioned, a really great time to, you know, use a tough situation to come together and rally together as an organization and really build that trust and, you know, even deepen that sense of connection.
Exactly. And all this, as a creator and one who I've worked in consulting major organizations throughout the country on creativity and help them to accomplish their goals, is that you have to create the environment that's safe, that's stress less, in order to be able to really stimulate or awaken creativity, that you can come up with innovative thoughts and processes to help the organization thrive in this kind of climate and beyond. It's an entire new way of thinking. It's an organizational mindset has to be changed. And as leaders, and you have board of directors, have to work with those board leaders, the chairperson and the vice chair and so on and so forth, and others who are supporting, to really start to make it an intentional effort to educate and include them in this conversation as well, because you're going to need the support of the board. You're going to need some of your key donors in order to really make this shift or create this new creation, I should say, on this open canvas. So it's very, very important in order to see in your organization these numbers of stress are not counted in this acceleration of stress and worry that impacts our physical health, our mental health, and all of that, inclusive of really disintegrating the thriving opportunity for the organization and the individuals.
We want to talk about some factors that really help to unlock creative innovation. You know, the first thing is about motivation, and this kind of speaks to the climate that we're in right now as well. It's very hard to be creative when you're just going through the motions, where you're in sort of a fight or flight response. And so I'll give just a personal example of this. You know, just in the past 3 months, you know, Alex and I have probably spent more time together than, you know, the past 10 years of our lives, right? And that can be, you know, added to everything else that's happening in the world, can be a potential for, you know, tension or conflict or stress. But really, you know, setting back, we make it a habit to have a gratitude practice. And one of the things that I'm really grateful for is the ability to really get to know each other on a deeper level, and also take some time to slow down a bit. So there always is a silver lining. And I think it is important, you know, regardless of whether or not you have, you know, a formal gratitude practice with your team members, but getting in the habit of expressing what you're grateful for and really seeing that in your team. You know, there's always, you know, things that you can notice with the team members that you're working with on a daily basis that you're truly grateful for. You know, this kind of really goes back to what we were saying in the previous slide is, you know, maybe taking some time to carve out for, you know, mental health, and encouraging your team members, you know, to step outside, to get exercise, you know, making sure that they're staying balanced when, you know, so much of our time is spent indoors these days.
Right. Just to add to that, as we move to the next one, is motivation. I mean, in addition to all the things that Emily said, also, I did a coaching with my team on how to work from home. Sometimes we'll sit there and we will work the entire day, not take a break, but really, or just kind of work through from rolling out of bed and just start working and then kind of have this kind of unorganized day. So it's very important to really remind the team when you're working even virtually, because you want to continue to focus on how can I unlock this creative process and practice within the organization that everyone is a participant. That really is very key. The second one's curiosity. Curiosity is something that we also integrated into our practice. We've always done it, but even more, it's been, if I can say, we've amplified or turned it up a little bit, right? The curiosity with us, I'll give you an example. We were at the end, just before spring break, because I work with the schools and the Arts Conservatory for teens, and we were looking for ways. We were saying, okay, do we continue to engage, or how might we engage was the word. So we created curiosity by reaching out. Our curiosity led us to reach out to the parents and ask the parents, do a survey on them. And after that, the parents and the students, and then our team, and did a training around how to create a curriculum for virtual trainings with our services that we offer. So it was our curiosity. It was first the motivation, right, that I engaged the team, and then the curiosity, which led to an expansion in what we do. And so while for many organizations in the both for-profit and non-profit sectors became a contraction in the market, we found an expansion because we dared to find this internal motivation, both not just within, but also within the organization as a whole, and with our team members, also which led to the curiosity. And then, of course, it gave birth to this freedom to create something new, to do something that we have not done before. 5 months ago, we would not have ever guessed that we would be doing what we are doing now, or the opportunities what will start, the doors that would have opened for us in this space, because we dared to tread unfamiliar places. We dared to engage in open canvas and create what we wanted to create. So I think it's a mindset thing that has to shift with leadership, which trickles down and out, right? To trickle down, those who are working your C-suite, and then out into the greater community, to the folks that we are serving every day.
Yeah, I really agree with this. And I think this is sort of a rubric that you could use to measure how much creative innovation is going to thrive in your organization. Just looking overall, how motivated is your team? How curious are people? When somebody comes to our organization when they're first starting out, they're always thinking for outside of the box ways. Oh, have you thought about this? Contributing ideas, and really giving the freedom to express those ideas. Want to make sure that motivation, that curiosity, that freedom is thriving and growing over time.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what you can go ahead and move to the next slide. For the sake of time, we want to get through these 5 key ingredients. This is not an exhaustive list, but it certainly is a starter list to either start engaging each one of the 5 if you have not, or to revisit if you've already engaged these 5, because I think we can't see it as something, oh, I already know, I've already done. And trust me, I live in the creative space every day, all day, from the organization to the music entertainment industry. And we always say, okay, how are we going to respond in this moment as it relates to this particular climate in which we are in? So pivot. Reimagine, your organization's practice and with what you're doing every service. So just completely looking differently and coming up, as I said earlier, what is the original thought in this particular space? And I'll give you a quick example on exactly what I mean by that. A few years ago, the music industry particularly many could not imagine, I would say the vast majority could not imagine monetizing music in the digital space. In fact, one of the guys I worked with was one of the originators of this concept, Richard Goddard. He shared with me, he said, my partner and I were literally run off the stage. They threw CDs at us and they said, get out of here, get out of town. That's never going to happen. Napster came about, they were going to shut it down. It wasn't going to happen. Many folks lost their jobs because they thought it would not, and they could not imagine monetize the industry from where they were to where it is today. I'm telling you, it has completely turned around, so much so it impacted laws on how the laws had to be rewritten. New bills had to be sent and passed in order to respond to the way that the industry in past had to reimagine its existence, how we experience it today. The same with the organization. It may be a 100-year-old organization that you're working with and you're leading right now, but regardless of how long the organization be around, you're in the leadership seat. You have an opportunity to influence and to impact in the 21st century how your organization and your operations is relevant to today's time and forward.
Yeah, the other thing when we talk about pivoting and reimagining is, adopting digital solutions. And we've seen this for years now. Working with multi-billion-dollar companies, there was always, this pressure in terms of digital transformation. And, most likely your organization has been embracing this change for quite some time now. But, this with COVID-19, it really accelerates things. And, we also have a very captive audience at this time. So we can be really creative with the content that we're sharing, really rethinking in-person events and transforming them into the digital space. But I want to caution here, and I want to give a couple examples. When we talk about transforming to digital, it's not just, throwing the same thing that was going to work in an in-person environment onto the digital space. I think people really are feeling burnout and fatigue when it comes to, Zoom meetings, and that can be exhausting. So really being creative when it comes to reimagining your online event or a digital campaign that you're running. Here are a couple different examples. Charity Water ran a campaign, and this was right around the beginning of COVID-19, but they really connected their mission back to COVID-19 in terms of what everybody was experiencing in the world. And this is important to keep it relevant and tie your messaging to something that people understand and that is top of mind. Another example of this is this, slide that just makes me smile when I look at it is all these kids dancing, right? And, what we don't necessarily want to see with an organization, putting a fundraiser together online is a lot of talking and exhausting, when it comes to, just not having that creative visual stimulation. And this was great to have kids all over dancing. This other nonprofit organization it had animals doing an obstacle course. With Arts Conservatory for Teens, we worked together with their largest nonprofit fundraising event of the year and transformed it into a virtual event that had nearly 200 attendees. And it was...
That stayed the whole time.
And people absolutely loved the event because it was nonstop entertainment. There were student performances, alumni performances, cameos from Grammy-winning artists, and we also had some of the donors and sponsor videos weaved in throughout the course of the event. So it was such an engaging and inspiring event, and I think it's important to really put thought into what we're doing in the online space because we have the opportunity to really connect in a way that we maybe couldn't have done previously.
Yeah, I just to add to that, collaboration. Brand collaboration is something that's always been very important. And so I think the really critical thing is that as an organizational leader is to really seek out new ways in this new environment. There's an open space for us to say, how can we collaborate? And whether it's on the marketing side or the philanthropic side of the for-profit companies, or even with the philanthropists, finding out even more like, what are they thinking right now? And how can you help them realize their interest? Maybe not new. Don't just think that we already know them and we already know what they want. it's very important to revisit and to engage them in this collaboration moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And also thinking in terms of what's significant for your ecosystem in the community. You know, one example of this is if you're an arts or education organization, but you also provide college readiness preparation, you know, maybe emphasizing the necessities right now in this climate. You know, the sad reality is there are, you know, budget cuts that are being encountered. And so just understanding and being aware of where people are allocating funds and how you can align that with the brands that you're, you know, looking to partner with. There's certainly quite a bit of organizations that are thriving in this climate and looking for a meaningful way to connect.
Yeah, and we do a lot of coaching in this area because it's very important that I think organizations understand there's so many different methods to show or showcase your significance in the greater ecosystem of your community, that you do not become off to the corner as an afterthought or something people will get back to later. Show the importance of your contribution to the current climate and its culture as a community is very critical, and to show that you're a major game player. We're going to get through a few more slides because we want to be able to open up for any questions fairly quickly.
Yeah, you know, just, you know, drawing on this point of collaboration is just understanding where companies are at right now, you know, just an awareness of how, you know, your existing corporate partners, how are they doing financially right now? And perhaps, you know, looking outside of the box for organizations, for companies that are really thriving right now and they're looking for a meaningful way to give back. So this is a short list. It's not exhaustive, but these are some industries that we're really seeing a lot of, you know, upswing, and they're doing really well during this climate. So just understanding where companies are at when you make that outreach.
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that it's various avenues to accomplishing your mission. And when you're looking and seeing what's in the market and those organizations that are doing well and the opportunities that can come of it, and where it be a win-win for both your organization and your partner, your sponsoring partner or contributing partner, I think is very, very clear.
Yeah, and we alluded to this a little bit, but in terms of collaboration, you know, in addition to companies that are really looking to make an impact right now, definitely don't overlook influencers, you know, celebrities, speakers. You know, the world has changed dramatically for them. They're used to traveling all over the world and, you know, large concerts and speaking and all different kinds of engagements. And that's really shifted quite a bit for 2020 and even into 2021 with a lot of, you know, still uncertainty. And so they're looking for a way to still be relevant and engage their audience and, you know, give back in a meaningful way. So, you know, really thinking about how can you engage influencers? This is one of the biggest trends that we're seeing in marketing overall, is the use of influencer marketing across channels, across brands, right? So really be creative in terms of, you know, is there a celebrity, you know, a point of contact in your organization? Are there local celebrities that you can reach out to? You know, these are just a few handful of celebrities that we reached out to on a recent campaign, you know, Grammy-winning artists, and they got back to us with a video within a week, which is literally unheard of. But, you know, people just have actually that time on their hands to be able to get involved in a different kind of way.
Yes.
Communicate. So this is another pillar of creative innovation. And when we talk about communication, it's really reimagining your whole communication strategy and looking at, you know, templates and scripts and kind of throwing those out the window in a sense. You know, I think more than ever before, people want that personalization. They want people to really be sensitive to the times. I know one of the things that I've noticed in terms of a trend is when there's especially sensitive times that we've navigated collectively as a country, you know, some organizations, some people have, you know, treaded through that and sent out emails and communications, social media posts that really kind of weren't appropriate given the timing, and you see a really big spike in unsubscribes. So I think it's really important to be cognizant more so than ever before about what's happening, what current events are happening. You know, maybe you have a campaign that's scheduled and really kind of rethinking that. You know, one thing from a marketing perspective that we're seeing is kind of this rethinking of the 90-day plan of these sales funnels and formulas, and really taking a more personalized approach, understanding the data and understanding how to engage in an authentic and compassionate way. And I'll give you a couple examples of this. You know, this is a really simple example, but you can easily see the benefits of communicating in a more personal way. You know, the first is very generic, it's not specific at all. And the second example addresses the person on an individual level. It recognizes that you took the time to understand how much they contributed to your organization, and is a really, you know, just a nice note to check in and say thank you. And along with this, you know, data and analytics is so important. We have the time to, you know, maybe do a little bit more of a deeper dive into some of the analytics to understand who is it that is engaging with your organization? Who are your supporters? You know, going into your CRM systems and doing a little bit of a deeper dive. I know analytics can take time, and, you know, I've worked in full-time in the nonprofit space. So I know that, you know, you might not have a full-time analytics person, but, you know, this time you might be able to dig in a little bit deeper to, you know, understanding the donor history, understanding, right, you know, even seasons where you've seen spikes in giving and reaching out to those donors in a proactive way to, you know, really navigate this time.
Right, right. And just to add just briefly to that, you can go to the next slide. I think that when you're looking at the data, so this may be something, if you have a lean team, you know, it could be one of those things of restructuring how, again, your operations, where there may be a day or two you set aside each month where you kind of go and look at the data for a couple of hours on those days together and collectively come up with strategies or ideas that creatively that gives birth to new approaches and how to respond and to increase the response rate to the information that you're sharing so that you have a high volume of engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are just some examples of data points. This is salsa. So just depending on whichever CRM that you use, you know, looking at what the conversion rate is on your email. So looking at some of the analytics, how much are people clicking through, you know, how many new subscribers are you getting from various campaigns? How many new donors have you gotten through a specific duration of time? These are all analytics that really can yield so much value to your organization.
Yeah.
So you all are probably very familiar with these channels. They're not, you know, going away anytime soon. Email marketing, 281 billion emails were sent in 2018. That number just continues to rise. So email marketing is not going away anytime soon. But we are seeing this desire for more personalization when it comes to email, like really thinking outside of the box, really maybe even thinking about segmenting your lists in terms of donors and volunteers and the population that you serve if you have different messaging. So that people don't get exhausted and they don't feel like, wow, this message really isn't relevant to me at all. And then they might, you know, subscribe or feel less engaged with your organization. Similarly, you know, thinking about social media, these channels, you know, you can engage slightly differently on Instagram and Facebook. And, you know, if you have if you're looking to engage a younger population, perhaps looking at TikTok when there is an opportunity for growth in this channel. Another, you know, some other channels to consider, certainly video production, you know, text messaging, text to give campaigns, and podcasting is a huge segment that continues to grow over time. And it might be something that would work really well for your organization in terms of getting thought leaders on and really, creating a buzz for whatever your niche is in the marketplace.
Exactly. Not very much more to add, but I think that the thing is that when you are engaging in social media is to really find as Emily said, segmented the market and really having maybe, again, as a team, if you're a lean team, to really may have a social media day where you're inviting some of your supporters and donors and featuring your key partners on your social media. It can be some of your board members who are influencers in the community, to have featured and highlighting them and having surveys or asking questions so you can get a response to get that, because the way the algorithms work in social media, the more comments, the more likes you have, you're pushed up to the forefront. You start to see you're trending more in the feeds of your existing, and then you can in the back office, of course, in the dashboard. So like for their friends to see as well. So all those little things and that really would help in the increasing your competitive advantage and remaining relevant as a brand.
Yeah, the last thing that around communications and marketing is this is a time to be really creative. So many brands that I've worked with have expressed the fact that they don't have enough in their digital library. They don't have enough content. So maybe taking, a day, as Alex mentioned, and carving that out to creating content, whether it's videos or whether it's photos. You could even, create a really creative campaign where you have, people, donors, or the population that you serve, take a selfie or a photo at home, and create some type of campaign that really, brings the community in a really creative way. But really thinking about content creation right now, because this is a time to be able to actually, really envision what that looks like for your organization.
Yeah, so explore is really another way of saying experiment. Try new things that you haven't tried before, as I alluded to earlier, and not be afraid to do that, and to not take it on as a leader that you have to come up with all the ideas. Include and incorporate the ideas from your board members, from your partners, from your team members. That's very, very critical. And we can get more in depth in this and more long conversations, but just want to kind of give you an idea on how you can really unleash or relieve the creative processes within yourself that you can really turn it on in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we really want to stress here is that it's so important, to not necessarily wait till 2021 to, take action. Your donors, your population that you serve want to know what you're doing right now and continue to be doing to be relevant. And the great thing is right now is, like we've kind of hit on before, is that there are lower barriers to entry if you want to experiment and, try out an online event or bring together, different collaborators and create something. One example of this is the We Are Family Pinellas County Virtual Festival that was done, that brought together a ton of different individual performers and organizations for a good cause. And this happened kind of, towards the beginning of COVID-19, but it was partners that would never kind of potentially reach out and collaborate and work together on a project, but everybody wanted to do something to support the community. They were able to raise money for a great cause and allocate funds. Everybody was able to grow their email list, which is a really great, benefit of that. So, if you have an event and you're thinking about in-person event and you're thinking about postponing it to 2021, maybe in lieu, or maybe for the time being, think of a creative way to experiment, whether it's an online campaign or whether it's a virtual event, so that you can continue to move the needle for your organization through times of adversity.
So this is the last one of the 5 about the ask, right? So revisiting the why, really as a leader to remember why you're existing and why you're doing what you do, but also helping to inform or keep your donors, your team as well, kind of revisiting that, because that also is a great element to the organizational culture that helps to give, I think, way to creative innovation, the thought of new ideas and new ways or practices to execute to ensure that you're performing at the highest level.
Right. Yeah. We want to really emphasize here that in times of economic uncertainty, your donors are really going to be the ones that connect and have a personal relationship with the organization. Those are the ones that are going to, really rally around and, continue to give, continue to cultivate, continue to communicate your brand, your mission in the world. And so that's more important than ever before, is to revisit the why and remember why donors got involved with your organization in the first place, and really continue to cultivate those relationships and nurture.
Right, cultivating and nurture. So I want to just really emphasize this. A lot of time I've seen and I've worked with organizations, and one thing that we have not practiced, and the thing that we have not practiced in the nurturing process, is waiting until we're wanting to ask for something. So that's something that you should not do when it comes to the cultivation or nurturing process. But remembering the birthdays, I'll send a text, Mother's Day, Father's Day, know it when their kids are graduating. Really become familiar. There you can, that in the CRM, there are some software that allows you to really have that feature. Others, if you're really watching the budget, try and friend them on Facebook. It'll pop up when when it's there. So it's very important.
Yeah, I was gonna just, Alex does a really, really great job of this, if I may say so, is just like, he has donors that call him all hours of the day and, talking for, on birthdays and, just reaching out and any type of, really developing a friendship, basically.
Yeah, friendship. So, knowing when there's some marriage or some loss in the family or someone's sick, or, is that kind of relationship. I'm the son of a pastor. I didn't say that earlier, but just learning some of those techniques that you have to, as a leader, you're in a leadership position in an office where there are a number of things that we already know that we have to deal with, but this is very critical because this is the bread and butter, if you will, of how the organization functions, or I like to refer to it as the oil in the motor of the vehicle. So I think it's very important to ensure that nurturing is there, is in place, that you are able to move it forward. And we're wrapping up here.
Yeah, and the last part of that is just to showcase and really celebrate your donors for the way that they give back, and there's so many different ways, creative ways that you can showcase your donors, whether it's a social media campaign or email or, a personalized video, but really making them feel special for the way that they contribute to your organization is so, so important. And thinking of outside of the box ways to do that. So this is an example of not doing that so well. But then, on the flip side of that, this was an email campaign that really showed a video from a presenting sponsor and her impact and why she chose to support the organization. So again, these are the 5 ingredients that we feel are so important to really cultivate creative innovation
in your
organization. And we hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and we'll open it up at this time for any questions.
Thank you so much, Emily and Alex. That was a really wonderful presentation. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box and we'll pass them along to Emily and Alex. We have about 5 or 6 more minutes left. So go ahead and type those in the chat box. Emily and Alex, if you have anything more that you want to chat about as we wait for questions to come in, please go ahead.
I would just say that this is a great time. This is a really great time to do something that you may have had a thought a while ago. For us, we've thought of this like 7 years ago. How can we We've created really new partnerships and really advanced our organization in ways that we would not have really taken the transition of the turn immediately had it not been for COVID-19.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, my big passion is around like the holistic side of organizations. And so when we talk about, the mental health, and we talk about the dialogues and the conversations and the motivating your team and, cultivating an atmosphere of curiosity and freedom, those are key ingredients that really help to build the foundation and allow creative innovation to thrive.
Right. And as you can see, our information here, our emails for you have any other questions, and we are definitely open to that.
Not seeing any questions coming in through the chat box yet, so if you have any more to chat about, you can.
Questions.
I have a question that came in to my private messages from Chris, saying that this is a great moment to be self-reflective, and your ideas and your encouragement is great. How would you suggest someone manages up from a position that's not in management?
I love that question. That is such a great question. And, I think if I'm understanding, correctly, it's, cultivating an atmosphere as much as you can, and maybe encouraging your team members and leadership to have a meeting where it's more of a brainstorming environment. A lot of times, and I definitely have seen this in the corporate world, is meetings that are unproductive. And I think there's not enough meetings where you are just able to brainstorm and, spend an hour or two really thinking outside of the box and coming up with like creative ideas. And this is such a unique opportunity and time to be able to do that. So maybe suggesting, to leadership, to have some of these types of conversations where it's not, necessarily focused on a very, very specific goal, but it's letting, the team come together and spend a certain amount of time to really think creatively outside of the box.
Exactly. Just to add, I think also just kind of partnering, if there's an opportunity to partner with other colleagues that you can go together as a team. Always there's strength in numbers, I believe, and just saying, hey, we're having a conversation. This is a way that we can help to advance our organization. We seeing in the current climate, there's such great opportunities for some organizations. I was on this presentation, I heard this presentation, or see what other organizations are doing, and that really is a way to set in context. Because sometimes leaders are so busy and right now trying to survive that they couldn't even take time for, or may have registered for this presentation today and couldn't even come. So I think those who do participate, we have an opportunity to really share the information and the encouragement and enlightenment in this regard.
Yeah, and I think more than ever before, organizations are realizing they're as good as, the people that are a part of the organization. And it's so important to nurture and support those team members. And when you are going through stress as a leader, you might be, focused on so many different things, as Alex said, that you might not spend the extra time to really have an open dialogue or address some of the current event issues. They might just be overlooked. And if you are feeling that way, I think it's really important to speak up and say, maybe we have a mental health lunch and learn, or, there's somebody that could come in and, do a creative brainstorm session, or, talking to leadership and saying it's important to me that we have a conversation that talks about, equity in the workplace.
Yeah. Or virtual happy hour. Sometimes you change it up, and have it where people can doing in a, we're in the virtual space, make it fun. You know, a virtual potluck, you know, where you sit and eat and enjoy each other's and listen and learn how to shift. I think shifting, the dynamics of the environment has already shifted or being shifted. So we have to jump in the shifting in order to be relevant, in order to thrive at our highest level and not get behind. You either get in or you get behind. And I don't think anyone who shown up today and others who could not make it either want to get behind, right? So the idea is to move forward and to move forward with relevance in response to the climate, showing our significance in the greater ecosystem of our socioeconomic system as well as our service systems for the greater community.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sure, I hope so too. We've got one last question. It's 3 o'clock now, so maybe take this one last question.
Sure.
And wrap it up. The question is, do you know any good tools to host a virtual brainstorming meeting?
Well, Zoom, if that's what they're talking about, a place to meet. I think Zoom is really good because you can share in Zoom, you can share the Google Docs where you can work on it together and brainstorm. You can also in Google Docs, not promoting or advertising for them necessarily, but we have used that. And there are other platforms to do that where you can type in real, together and see what's happening and also see each other. So it's really cool.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Emily and Alex, for sharing this
Thank
incredibly informative and timely presentation. Thank you, everybody that participated today.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate your time.
Everyone, have a great day.
Everyone.